Guten Morgen, Rabbi Sai. Welcome to the Sukkah. So it was decided last night that this morning is the final breakfast, and Be'ezra Hashem tonight, Shoshana Rabbah, at 10 p.m. we're going to get together again in the Sukkah, but not tomorrow morning. Who's saying Shir is yet to be determined. I don't think I'll have time to prepare. Yeah, I'm not going on a trip. With the trip. That's right. Come here, Mr. Fetter. Say it again. Shirt's going to be tonight, not tomorrow morning. Before I get to the sponsors, I want to say thank you first to all the sponsors, starting with Meir Planka, Leon Welcher. We had Benzi Novak. I think Jonathan Stefansky is doing something. I don't know. He wanted it in the morning. I don't know if we'll do tonight. We'll see. But we'll say Jonathan Stefansky. We'll put him on the spot. Beitzah Hashem. Moshe Chaim Stefansky at the grill. Mordechai Seltzer with the setup and everything else. A bunch of kids. What's the name of that kid with the payas? Parrots? What's his name? Akiva. Akiva 2. His father's the Rav of Karlebach. Unbelievable worker. Thank you to Mati last night, sponsoring the pizza together with Natan Khoshnood and Avi Factor, all that expensive wine. And then we have Simon Jacobs with all the Castell. 24 bottles of Castell. Unbelievable. Who else do we have? And everybody else that helped out. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of guys. Yeshua Aaron Price, of course. Comes early in the morning. Set up the iced coffee. So, yishkoyach to everybody. The Paras HaChodesh, Shmuly Hecht, in honor of Dovid Zlatnik, F200. Akiva Sulkowitz, F94. Sholom Rand, in the house. 202. That's right. You see, the Elam knows Sholom Rand. F202. Shmuly Davidowitz, B202. An official 8-minute Daf Yomi committee. Shlomo David Ziskind, in memory of our dear mother, Kayla Avrohom Moshe Halevi, on her 18th yarhrzeit. Also an opportunity to pay tribute to the inspiring and indefatigable Reb Eli. How do you say it? Indefatigable. No, indefatigable. No way. Why does he have to trip up the Ponovitcher? Terrible. Indefatigable. No. Again? Yeah. Oh, indefatigable. I'm not defatigable. His supportive family and selfless team. Thank you. Marc Berkson, in honor of my daughter Shoshana Miriam's 9th birthday. Ima and Abba, love you. Very proud of you. Mendy Greenblatt in Shamshi Shlufrak. Now, Rabbi say, if you don't know Shamshi, now let me first say this before. L'zeich nishmas, the grandfather, Binyamin Ben Shamshin A, Sholom's yarhrzeit is today. Shamshi Shlufrak. If you don't know him, and you could spell his name, you never heard how to spell his name, you get a free Gemara right now on the spot. Anybody, Shlufrak. Shlufrak. Szlafrok. Yesterday I said, I have no idea what I said. Zlafrok. Comes over to me, my name is Shlufrak. What's wrong with you? No, he said it in a beautiful, nice, he says, you're not the only one. He said it in Mamish Edelkeit, Shlufrak. Okay. He needs a Shini Hashem quickly. I mean, in the spelling, not so much the shame. All right. We have people from America on. Wow. Yisrael Goldstein, Shalom Aleichem, on Zoom. Dear Reb Eli, AB misses your live shiurim in Chicago very much. AB was that kid, a 10, 11-year-old, who tripped me up during shir. He asked me a beautiful kasha. I didn't have an answer. But is excited to be able to learn with me and my father. Picture attached. And now, Baruch Hashem, his uncle, Yosef Mendelsberg, signed up for free Gemara Shoshana too. I'm sure Yosef would love a basketball chavrusa shaf with you next time you're in town. I think I'm done with basketball. Also, AB told me he sent you an email a while back. That was his first email ever sent in his life. So resend it again. Beitzah Hashem will read it. Not sure any other MDY member can claim that distinction. Good might, Sammy Joseph. Here we go. 3 generations in the sukkah. Here's AB. Big Balkish in this kid. Next, we have pictures from sukkahs around the world. This is in Ben Schwartz's sukkah in the 5 towns. Jade Atherton, Bodner, Eli Dykman, the, what do I call him? The what Lubavitcher? Shlomi Klein, the token Lubavitcher, Ben Schwartz, and Akiva Ziegler, all right here, the ganze Oilam. So beautiful. And this is inside Ben Schwartz's sukkah. Here's Mo Landy's sukkah. Look at this sukkah, Beitzah. And of course, we have Elchanan Pressman sukkah. Yes, it's real. I'm going to mind. Please see attached. And it came out beautiful. I can show my picture while I'm reading the thing. Thank you for saving us some money on our sukkah's decorations this year. I also brought one over to Jay Spector's Continue Karsa Toiv for introducing me to the shir. Brachas Daf Dalet. We have here with us Rabbi Mati Kornfeld, who's with us from Brachas Daf Beis. 2 daf earlier than Elchanan. Unbelievable. It's a big zach. Brachas Daf Beis. He's Brachas Daf Dalet. And of course, we hung it up on our sukkah panel picture. Well, Wall, you haven't heard from me personally in a while, but we're still almost certain that the Chumash shir will initiate shortly as we're near Parshas Bereshis. Hope to see you soon. Elchanan Pressman. And finally, we have here from Michael Lager, breakfast in the sukkah with Reb Eli in Portland, Oregon. Rabbi Rafi Schenk is a new recruit to the Daf Yomi shir. Here you go. Beautiful. I don't know, can anybody see over there? It's little sun is shining. Do we have time here? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagofen. Said Leishav already.
90 weeks.
90 weeks. I don't know what the significance of that is, David. 100 weeks. You tell me by 100. Please keep my name anonymous. I started with brachas. Here's another brachas guy. I made it all the way through to Daf Kuf Yud Gimel in Shabbos. I lost the cheshek, the chush, after falling behind, and I kept on trying, started Masech, but never made it through. Been through a divorce, second marriage. Daf Beis of Beitzah fell out the night before my mother-in-law was nifter, and I made a bli neder to not miss another day in her schus. For the first time, I don't look at the daf as hard, being hard anymore. It brought the geschmackness back to me, and I just really want to say, I should call to you and everyone else who makes the daf so readily available and easy with you as a Maggid Shir. I've never been to Eretz Yisrael in 36 years, in my 36 years, and I wish I could come just to be there and experience the shir for just one day. See, you guys have it good. You're here, you live here. There's a guy that lives across the street, watches the shir every day, and hasn't been here yet. Hasn't been to a live shir yet. Lives literally across the street. I'm calling you out. Who's that? Rudensky. Rudensky is the Maggid Shir. One of them, film Maggid Shir. The schusim I learned should be Lidin early Basra Dovid Akoin. I get Mayed, and real thank you for bringing Torah back into my life. I'm not gonna say his name. I have to read this because it's Neget to yesterday. You always get excited when the Gemara we're learning is related to the parsha. In Koheles today, there's a pasuk, and it says Perik Tes Pesach Yud Beis. Ki gam yoda adam asito ki dagim shenachazim into the raw ukitziparim machuzim b'pach, talking about catching birds and fish. So he says, it has everything to do with our sugya achuzim b'pach kim yoikshim bnei adam leis, which basically translates that when men are caught up in a moment of disaster, whatever there may be, it falls upon them like a fish caught in a fatal net or like a bird seized in a snare. We've been learning in Beitzah all about trapping, but we never saw it from the vantage point as man being the victim. It takes Koheles to make us realize that we're all running around trying to avoid being trapped, whether from a spiritual or physical snare. Koheles gives us advice in the last pasuk to avoid the snare. Es Elokim yirah, ves mitzvos of Shemar. Dan Kaufman, Ishkoich Dan. And one more to get to yesterday. I learned pshat that a dog is az because we see, by the way, I was at a minyan yesterday, Rabbi Pessin's son read, I've never heard such a chiduch hadibur in my life. Clear and fast, it's almost impossible to read with him. That's how fast it is. And there's only one thing that's more chashiv than reading that quickly, is to catch a mistake and fix him before he's in the next parak. That's me. Can't read it. Literally. I can read it maybe 20% as fast as of his speed. Unbelievable. But what I'm trying to say is I didn't hear a word he said. Like nobody understood a word he said. He read it. He was the Yitzhak. I should have came to you. You read it fast and we can understand. I learned a pshat that a dog is az because we see a dog is never afraid of anything. And this is very true. The reason why I'm reading this is from Aaron Sittner. We have a little tiny dog that any cat in the street could kill it in a second. Yet any person that comes in the house, he barks and barks and barks. He's a az. That's the pshat. Beautiful pshat. Yeah? Even if an animal much bigger than his near, the dog will try and be tough and bark. Absolutely emes. Okay, Rabbi Sai. We're starting a brand new Mishnah, brand new sugya, and it's a sugya. We're going to make it very, very simple. Says the Heilige Mishnah, sponsored by official Refuas and Yeshuos of Avrohom Moshe Halevi. Bechar shenofal labar. Every firstborn animal, which is a zachar, is a bechar. A bechar. And bechar is even in our days. And if you eat a bechar, even in our days, chayv karas. You know about that? Just last night after the whole kumsitz situation, which was really beautiful. So this Talmud Chacham that I just called him out the other day, he's not part of the shir, but he heard the singing, he came up, and he says, I heard you mentioned that I have a goat, and I walk my goat in the street. You made me into the town's fool, he tells me. I was like, I just said what you do. You walk in the street with it. I just said that you walk. Anyways, I don't think I mentioned his name, but he wasn't that upset. But he said, I had a very good kasha. Is his goat a bechar or not? He had a good reason to believe because he bought a mother and twins. And he says usually the mother gives birth to a male and a female. That's how it usually goes. And is it her first litter? Is one of them a bechar? A big kasha. But what you do today is you have to get a guy involved in the whole situation. Otherwise you have a problem with bechar. So we're talking about a bechar, a firstborn, which already has developed a mum. The way it works is, in order for you to decide whether or not it's a mum, you have to bring the professional guy in, you have to bring the pro, the mumcha. He decides whether or not, halachically, it's a mum. Now, if it has a mum, then the kohen gets to eat it. If not, goes in the mizbeach. So, bechar shenafal labar, this bechar fell into a pit. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, yered mumcha v'yira, found a gewaldige picture of a cow, fell into a pit, and here you have a mumcha going down. Now, I don't know why he's going down. Let's pretend he's going down to check to see if there's a mum. Here he is, going down, put a bag over its head. I guess it's kind of dangerous to be in the same pit with the animal that just got stuck there. Yered mumcha v'yira. Now, if this animal has a mum, and this mumcha decides it's a real mum, so now the animal's no longer muktzah, I could go ahead and shecht it. If it has a mum, which happened yesterday, as we said, you could take the animal out of the pit and shecht it. If it doesn't have a mum, you cannot shecht it. We're going to see that these words, v'imlav, might mean something different than we're thinking right now. Imlav what? That doesn't have a mum. The Gemara describes it as something slightly different. V'imlav le'yishchot. Reb Shimon Omer, kol shei mumay nikar mi'ba'id yayim. If you didn't notice that it has a mum before Yantav, ein ze mina muchan. This is not considered muchan. In other words, you can't even use it b'di'evet. Why? There's two reasons in Rashi. One is that it looks as if you're fixing something. You can't just go ahead and decide that this is ready to eat. Or you can't decide today that it has a mum because it's like doing a din Torah. We're going to learn later on in the Masechta, in the Lameds, I think it's Lamed Vav, that you're not allowed to do a din on Yantif. You're not allowed to judge somebody on Yantif. So you can't judge this animal. You can't say, this animal is a Balma. Somebody yesterday, I don't even know their name, and he told me in the name of somebody else here in Ramat Bet Shemesh, and I'm just was that you? You told me? No. I forgot who it was. But anyway, it was cute, so I'm going to say it over. L'kavod Yantif. Usually they don't see these kinds of tires, but since it's a local tire, I'll stick in my own twist. If you want to remember that Reb Shimon is the one that's machmir and Reb Yehuda is the one that's mekel, because typically Reb Shimon is mekel when it comes to muktzah. And over here it's the reverse. Reb Shimon is machmir and Reb Yehuda is mekel. He says you could remember it by who else was in a pit? Yosef HaTzadik. And who put him in the pit? Shimon. And who took him out of the pit? Yehuda. So Mela, that's why Torah. Okay, L'kavod Yontif. But you can remember it. What? Somebody said, ooh, somebody liked it. Okay, great.
It's a theorized. Therefore what? Theorized.
And therefore, Shimon, who started the whole thing with the pit, he put Yosef HaTzadik. So he has to be Mekel here. What? Where is Levi Friedman?
He's not in Israel.
He's not in Israel. Okay.
He's in the water. He's not outside.
No Lashon Hara, no. All right. Judah David. But Michael Mifligi, Judah David is not in the Waldorf. I'll tell you that right now. But Michael Mifligi, what is the machlokes? Now, Rashi points out right away. Obviously, the machlokes cannot be a question: do we hold of muktzah? Do we not hold of muktzah? Right? Because then it would have to be the reverse. Reb Shimon does not hold of muktzah. Reb Yehuda does hold of muktzah. Perhaps the machlokes is, could you judge a mum or not on Yantiv? There would be the Sava Roy Mum Yantiv. L'chadchila you go down into the pit, check it out, decide whether it's a mum or not. Reb Shimon Savar Ein Roy Mum Yantiv. Why you cannot make a din on Yantiv? And in fact, that's the halacha. We passing like that. You don't see mum on Yantiv. Maybe that's a machlokes. If that's a machlokes, why do you have to give me a story that an animal fell into a pit? Just straight out machlokes. Could you judge a defect on Yontif? Is that considered judging or not? Nothing to do with the pit. Says Gemara, well, that's not a great question. No. The reason why, perhaps that is the machlokes. But I want to tell you the idea of a bechar. I want to tell you because we Yidden are very careful about the pain of an animal. And Tzar Bel Chaim is a big thing. So perhaps in order to save the animal, even though it's also for us to save, maybe we could do some trickery. Bilaske, we'll do a trick and we'll bring him out. Now what? We'll say, oh, I think that's a real mum. We'll pull him out. And then, oh, sorry, it wasn't such a big mum. Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Yeshua says, by the story of Oisav is Benai, a mother and its calf are not allowed to be shechted in one day. So if the mother and the calf fell into a pit, the best picture I was able to find, couldn't find the cow, found this one. We'll have to do 2 elephants in a pit. Elephants are not kosher. Don't paskin. There's people that paskin everything. Here, it says this, they go. So what do? So he has a trick, Rabbi Yeshua. You say, I want to eat the baby elephant. I like veal. So you take the baby out. And they say, no, I made a mistake. I don't want veal today. Today I want regular. And then you take out the mother. So that's a trick. You pretend that it's okay, and you trick. So Mamela, since Rabbi Yeshua says you can do trickery, perhaps you can do trickery also when it comes to our case. Also, there's one cow. Make a trick. Pretend that you know that's a mum kavua. It's a permanent mum, and therefore, for some reason it's all okay. Komash Malon, and that's why the Mishnah talks about a bar to say that we don't do trickery. Ihachi, if that's the case, that the whole problem. So what's the main akuda here? What's the main idea? Whether or not you could take an animal out of the pit. Ihachi lo yishchoid. So it's not even about shlita now. Lo ya'alav yishchoid mibayilei. The main thing is whether or not you could take it out. So says the Gemara, leitzricha the ovar va'aske. What happened was, there's 2 halachas here. One halacha the Mishnah is talking about whether or not you could give the animal, could you judge a mum? That's question number 1. The other thing is, what happened was, when a person goes ahead and takes the animal out, sorry. He already took out the animal. He was over. That guy that likes to be over things. So perhaps we should allow him to continue doing what he wants to do, and Shechta Kamashmalon. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about that this animal doesn't have a mum. You pulled him out with no reason, says Rashi, and I had to have him, meaning you should be able to shecht him. Ask the Gemara, what are you talking about? So now we just have to qualify what's going on here. It doesn't make any sense. You're not allowed to shecht a b'char that doesn't have a mum. So it has a mum. So if it has a mum, it's muktzah. First, what happened was, so says the Gemara, this is a story. This animal had a temporary mum before Yontif, and now it became permanent. Because this guy's hoping and wishing in his mind that the mum will get worse and that he should be able to eat it. Otherwise, he won't be able to eat it. So that's the shaila. Maybe we had a havamina. You should allow it. Kamash malon, not. So again, so when the Mishnah says v'imlav, you see the top line in our Amud over here. V'imlav. In other words, if you went ahead and you pulled out the animal when you weren't supposed to. In the beginning, we thought it means it doesn't have a mum. Now we're saying it does have a mum. Even though it has a mum kavua, you're not allowed to, kamashmal, you're not allowed to shecht. Why not? Because either, two reasons Rashi gives. Either it's muksa machmas isur, you weren't allowed to use it to begin with, so now, just because it got a mum kavua doesn't help me. Or because you pulled this animal out when you weren't allowed to illegally, we give you a kanas. Okay. Taner Rabbanon. Bechar tam shenofa labar. We're talking about, says Rashi, that these Tanaim, Reb Yehuda Anasi, Rebbe, the one who wrote the Mishnah, doesn't hold the muktzah. Why? Over here there's no muktzah because he had in mind to eat this animal the entire time. So there's no muktzah. Bechar tam shenofa labar. You have a bechar that has no mum. Enjoying? Givaldik. Bechar tam has no mum. Shenofa labar. Fell into the bar. So according to Reb Yehuda Anasi, there's no muktzah. Why is there no muktzah? Because he had in mind to eat this thing. He was hoping that something's going to happen. Reb Yehuda Anasi omer yerid mumcha v'yira im yesh bo mum. Reb Yehuda Anasi, Rebbe says, go in there, check out to see if there's a mum. Ya'ale v'yishchait v'im lav. What does im lav mean? If there's no mum, lo yishchait. So I'm sorry. Im lav means even if there is a mum, now there's a knas. Lo yishchait. Who? Yeah, he does.
In live, if it does not have a mum.
But check. I do Rashi. Vim lav. What's the chiddush here? What's vim lav? Of course, vim lav. What's that? So look at Rashi. I like the other pshat. Okay. Vim lav. Even if it has a mum, otherwise vim lav doesn't make so much sense. Vim lav. Okay, shkoyach, im lav. Even if it has a mum, you give him a kanas. Fine. Amal Reb Shimon ben Asya, Harei Amru, Ein Roy Mum B'Yontif. We're not allowed to check it out. You're not allowed to bring. We decide what's Harei Amru. So Rashi goes in here to say that Reb Shimon bar Yochai was the Rebbe of all of these. Was the Rebbe of Rebbe. Reb Shimon bar Yochai, Rashbi, was Rebbe's Rebbe. So Harei Amru, we already said in the previous generation, Ein Roy Mum B'Yontif. You're not allowed to go bring a mumcha in there. Can't bring the professionals in. Keitzad. So now, Rabbi Isai, here we have a Beitzah that tells us three things. Very, very simple. And this chart is going to make it even simpler. Keitzad. Noila boy mo me'erev yontif ein mevakrim oisoi b'yontif. Here. If there's a mum before yontif, blue. In this case, blue is not green, it's not 100% good, and it's not red, it's not 100% bad. It's in between. It's parav. So I did a check with a red mark. What does that mean? B'di'evid. So it says, if the mum developed before Yontif, you're not allowed to check this animal on Yontif. Why? I'm saying why, if you do check it, it's okay b'di'evid. Because all you're missing is a tiny piece. You have the mum. The animal's already a goner. It's a Baal mum. You need the rabbi to say, give the stempel. Yeah? Person dies and you need a death certificate. Okay, but the person's not going to live if you don't. He's dead. You just need a stempel. Fine. So it's a little bit of a chasarn in tikkun. But you're not fixing something. What was the whole problem? The whole problem was that you're fixing something. You're not fixing it 100%. You're fixing it only 5%, 10%. And that, if you shouldn't do it, but if you went ahead and you're over and you brought a rav in, a mumcha, you could eat that. So that's halacha number 1 in blue. Now we turn the page. Noila boy mum biyantif. Look at this, red. What's red? If the mum was created on Yontif, that now you're fixing it completely. When Yontif came in, you couldn't eat the animal at all. 0%. What happened? On Yontif, it got a terrible mum. It's not going to survive this. It's a mum that now it allows you to eat the animal, but that happened on Yontif. So even b'di'evet, you can't eat it. So you see? It's red, 100% red. Mum, Yontif, red. Now, let's do this balpeh. Very, very simple. What happens if an animal was born on Yontif with a mum? So the Gemara says very, very simple. A third case. We have a case that the mum happened there of Yontif, a case that the animal was born before Yontif, but the mum occurred on Yontif. And a third case that he's born with a mum. Now, the difference is that a bachar is born a bachar. You have to be born a bachar. I'll show you Valed here. Where's the pasuk? It's here somewhere. It has to be born. And if it's born, maybe with a mum, and we decide it's a mum, we'll see. So let's see what happens. The Gemara says a very, very simple svara over here. If this green case was in fact a blue, in other words, only b'di'eved, not 100% mutter, then the Beitzah should say it together over here in the blue. There should be a section of b'di'eved in the Beitzah. It should say, if there's a mum that happened Erev Yontif, or if it was born with a mum, what's the halacha? A check with a red. It's a parav, it's in between. If you're over, then you can eat it. The fact that the Beitzah brings it all the way at the end of the Beitzah, that tells me that it's a category in its own. There's 3 categories in the Beitzah. There's a category blue, category red, and that has to be a category green, 100% mutter. Not a b'di'eved, 100% mutter. If an animal is born with a mum, yeah? Menachem, good? I just don't understand. Not? The cup is verstoppt. Too much wine, maybe. I really think that every shir should have charts, because I don't know how to explain it and how people could understand without a chart. But it's okay. You're saying it's not that difficult.
We love the charts. That's what
Yeah.
It's great charts.
No, I love the chart. It's like, now I understand. Okay. So you hear the cheshbon, let's see the cheshbon inside. Very, very simple. Return to the Avrohom Moshe Halevi, sponsored by the MDY Tehillim group. For all those who need Shidduchim, Refuas and Yeshuos, please join us at tehillim.8mindav.com. Sponsored by Natan Khoshnood. For my children, Ari Kolev and Yisrael Yaakov Ben Dvora. They were both here in the sukkah last night. They should both do well in Eretz Yisrael. Have a cheshik for Torah, mitzvahs, and yarhrzeit. Says the Gemara. Vishavin, but everybody agrees. Shem noilad hu umumay imay shezeh min hamuchan. This case right over here, it was born with the mum. It's muchan, meaning it was designated. You can go ahead and eat it. Dorash Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Now, if the olam wasn't like into the pizza last night, then this would be a joke. This question. Who was Rabba Bar Rav Huna? Who was Rav Huna's Rebbe? You didn't eat pizza last night? So we just learned yesterday that Rav Huna Rav Nachman and Rav Chizda were all Talmidim of Rav. So the same person, Dorash Rabba, the son, Bar Chavrin, Dorash Rabba Bar Ravuna. Noiladu umume imoy, mevakrim oisa b'yontav l'chatchila. If he was born with a mum on yontav, you could bring the mumcha in l'chatchila. Rav Nachman. Now we get a little bit more of a picture. If we were just to remember this for the whole Shas, Rav Nachman, who is also a Talmud of Rav, and yesterday he had a conversation with Rabbi Ravuna also. Abba Tani. Over here it seems from Rashi that Abba means my father, Rav Nachman. Some say the Shita Mekubetz says Abba means your father, Rav Huna. Tani imavar bikroi mevukar. Meaning that it's only in b'diavad. Im avar, if he was oiver. Now you can't do it if you want to do it. If you were oiver in avera or whatever, you were oiver, you didn't listen, and you went ahead and you checked it, mevukar. What does that mean? That it's not green, it's more like the blue. It's b'diavad. What are you telling me you can do l'chatchila? Omar Abaya, here comes that svara that we went over before, and now it's going to be the second time inside. Omar Abaya, if I say the Rabbi Bar Ravuna Mistabra, I think Rabbi Bar Ravuna is right. Why? You see, there are three parts in the Beitzah: blue, red, and green. The first part is if the mum occurred before Yontif, you cannot check it on Yontif. That's only l'chatchila delay. How do you have a chapter dummy? But if you go ahead and you do it, okay. If the mum developed on Yontif, the animal was born before Yontif. But his mum was developed on Yontif, red. You can't do anything. And then it says, so then why does it say a third category? Because the third category is different than the first two. How could it be different? It's not a b'diavad and it's not aser. So what is it? It's a l'chatchila. If the animal was born with a mum on yontif, then l'chatchila, you go ahead and we tell you go ahead and check it. Says the Gemara, we have a problem. Mishai came along and has a different brisa. And look how beautiful this chart is going to be. Oh, look at this. Same chart, Rabbi say, but two reds. Instead of a blue on top, there are two reds. What forces us to say that this is green? Because there's a red and a blue. But if they're both red, we're not forced to say this is green. We're not forced to say it's a l'chatchila. We could say that this is what? A b'diavad. We have another category. You're asking me a question. Why didn't you put this case together with the top one? Because it's very different. But look at this. If the two top cases are red, they're both 100% asur. There's no b'diavad here. So then the third case could be different than the first cases, but you're not forced to say that it's a l'chatchila. Now you can say it's different. How? It's only b'diavad. Yeah. Givaldik. How do you do this without charts? I don't know. So beautiful. Huh? It's off the charts. Shah. You gotta take that out, Yosef. Hope I didn't pick it up. You hear, Nachamal? Since this guy is not a b'diavad, they're both asur. Whether you have a mum before Yontif, whether the mum happened on Yontif, they're both asur. So the next case, the third case, could be a different case. It's a case of b'diavad. You're not forced to say that the third case is a l'chatchila case. Over here, you are forced. Why? Because you have two cases before it. One is a b'diavad and one is asur. So the third case has to be different than it. How? The only other way to be different is to say that's the l'chatchila. Great. Says the Gemara. Here, these two cases. Right over here. The second case. What's the halacha? What does ein min amucha mean? It's not designated, meaning even b'di'evet it's also to use. Velo kashihach. Now, velo kashihach is so beautiful. I don't even have to say anything. What I do with this brisa? This brisa says mefurish, different than this brisa. It's a stira. Is the top case blue or red? Which one is it? It's a contradiction. Says Gemara, I'll tell you what happened over here. The reason why you think it's blue and it's b'di'eved, Adar bar Ukmei, the Mishabish Vitani. There's a Talmud Chacham, his name is Adar bar Ukmei, only brought down in Shas once, it happens to be on our daf, and he gets confused. He has a pretty weak memory, and when he repeats his brises, he messes up. He messed up a shtickle. That's it. That's the answer. It's not blue. He thought that this case is a b'di'eved. In fact, this case is red. And if this case is red, this case could be a b'di'eved. You see, I don't know if I pointed it out. Yes, you're right, it's a green box because I didn't have patience to change it, but the check has a red line through it. It's a b'di'eved. Okay. Zog the Gemara. Whatever you do, don't go speaking to the guy from the next year and say, well, the blue turned the green and red, blue against red. He's not going to know what you're talking about. But you guys, you understand that you understand. Okay, fine. Our Mishnah seems to be meduik like this, that what? It says, Reb Shimon says, anytime the mum is not recognizable before Yontiv, it's not muchan. It's not designated. What does it mean? If you'll say that it means you can't see it at all, pshita, tzrich meimar. Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees to this. Why would Rabbi Shimon waste his time telling Rabbi Yehuda this halacha when even Rabbi Yehuda admits to this? What happened was a mum. Just you didn't show it to the chacham yet. He didn't decide whether it's a permanent or a temporary mum. But it says, Ein ze min hamuchan. Even if the mum was there before Yontiv, it's not considered muchan. Shma mina. Ein min hamuchan again means what? It's aser even b'di'eved. That's ein min hamuchan. And it's meduik from the Mishnah like that. By minei, sticking the word Rav Hillel Mirava. Of course, it's not Hillel Zaken. It's an Amayra. Many, out of 1,000 years later. Rav Hillel Mirava. Yesh muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos or ein muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos. If the typical case, Rashi says, there's many cases, but a very easy case to understand are raisins. You have grapes, which are edible. Obviously, they're not muktzah. Once you put them up on the roof, here's a rooftop, and you put the grapes down, I noticed there's a net here underneath with stones. I guess when they become raisins, all you need to do is lift up the net and you gather. You don't have to sit there and shovel it. Okay. So what happens is that there's 3 stages here. Stage that the grapes are edible. Then the grapes, you put them in the sun, they start spoiling and rotting, so you can't eat them. And then they become raisins and you can eat them. What happens if during Shabbos they were not edible for a moment? For 2 hours you couldn't eat them. So the muktzah, they're disgusting. You don't want to touch them. Does that muktzah last for the entire Shabbos? Or do we say that once that period goes away, they become edible, now you're allowed to eat them again? So let's read it. Yesh muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos, meaning, Chatzi Shabbos would mean a little bit different than how we would read it with the simple pshat. Chatzi Shabbos would mean, and it stays for the whole Shabbos. Not for a half a Shabbos like it reads, but yesh muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos, since there's muktzah for a minute, does it remain for the whole Shabbos? Oy, ein muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos, or perhaps, yes, it's muktzah for those 2 hours when it's not edible, but it doesn't remain for the whole Shabbos. So the Gemara just qualifies, if these raisins were edible when Shabbos came in. Now, right, the famous concept, migui diskatsoi lebein hashmoshois iskatsoi lekuli yoyma. If something is muktzah during bein hashmoshois when Shabbos comes in, for that moment, it remains muktzah for the whole Shabbos. So Gemara wonders, what's going on here? What's the case? Just tell me simple pshat. If these raisins were edible, then of course you could eat it the whole Shabbos. What's the problem? If they weren't edible, so they were muktzah for a split moment, and if they're muktzah for a split moment, then they're muktzah for the whole Shabbos. There's no machlokes in that. Like Tzricha says the Gemara, I'll tell you what happened. The chazi v'hader itchi Oh, that's the story. They were good, let's say they were good raisins as Shabbos came in. So you would think that they're not muktzah. But then it rained and they swelled up and they're not edible anymore. Disgusting. Wet raisins, disgusting. And then that happened on Shabbos. So I would think because for 2-3 hours, when it's wet and swollen and not edible, it should remain muktzah for the whole entire Shabbos. That's the shayla. Mai. Omerlei, yesh, muktzah. Once it becomes muktzah for those 2 hours during Shabbos, the muktzah remains for the rest of the Shabbos. Yesh muktzah. Eisvei. I apologize for all those guys that came from Yerushalayim, and a lot of them. The whole table over there. Bunch of guys from New York. From places. It's one of those dapim that's a real sugi. We got to take this daf serious. No time for stories and jokes. Yeah? At least for me. What? One story? The story on the train. Rabbi said the story on the train. What shaykhs does it have to do with sukkahs?
When does it have to?
Nachman Seltzer wants to get up here and say the story about the train. He talks about it all the time. I refuse to say it. He says it's the best story. And he wants to get up here and say the story. He's going to get up here and say the story. I don't care.
I'll tell the story. Sure. Okay. The story goes back.
Oh.
Sure, no problem. Okay.
He didn't see the story. So how does he know it?
I'm a Kabbal. This is Emes.
Camera, you gotta sit. The camera.
Sit. Eli, move over.
Hold on. Let me give you this.
I think I wasn't there. Reb Eli says it happened. I'm a Kabbal. Basically.
Somebody tell me why he thinks this is a great story.
I'll tell
Okay.
you why. It's a great story. You'll hear why in a second. Reb Eli was on his way to Pesach, coming back to Yeshiva, 2 in the morning. And how old are you?
Probably
18?
17.
17 years old. 2 in the morning on a train going to Pesach. Suddenly the door of the car, he's by himself. The only guy on the car, his feet are up on the seat across from him. And suddenly the door opens up and in walk 6 guys, African-American chevra. 6 guys walk in like this. They walk in like this. They walk in. And they see him and they surround him. And they're looking at him. It's 2 in the morning. He's by himself. And they look at him. They stop and they look at him. He doesn't miss a beat. His feet are up and he looks at them. This is why this is a great story. He says, which one of you wants to die first? And off they go. And they just walk out of the train. And that's why I say it's a great story. It's a great story. Scott.
Did anybody think that was a good story? Now you know why I didn't say it.
That's a great story.
2 months ago.
I didn't say it in shir. I said it in shir too. I said it. I myself said it. Nachman, you said it, and you were there.
I wasn't there, I guess.
There's no way you weren't there.
You said it. I heard it.
I'm with you. That is a great story.
So anyway, so the blue and the green, and the blue is l'chatchila b'di'eved eisvei. No, I'm hacking. No, we're not going back to the blue and the green. Eisvei. Oh. Are you just knocked Nachman? Eisvei v'shavin shem noilad u'mumoy imoy shezeh min hamuchan. That's the kasha. Everybody agrees that if we have to go back to this chart. Where's everything? Oh, it's over here. Thank you. V'shavin shem noilad u'mumoy imoy shezeh min hamuchan. We learned that if it's born with the mum, it's considered designated. So we're talking again. So we're going back. How does this fit in? Because we had a question whether or not there's a muktzah l'chatzi Shabbos. If something is muktzah for a moment, you can't eat these grapes for whatever reason. Let's say, another example is, let's say you during Shabbos, the cleaning lady takes the leichter and puts it on your on a chair, right? The question that we had in the hotel. But it happened on Shabbos and you didn't do it. The cleaning lady did it. So now it became a basis l'davar aser. Are you allowed to move that chair? You yelled at her, what are you doing? She moved it away. But for a moment, that chair became aser. If the chair is aser for a moment, does it remain aser for the whole Shabbos or not? So the Gemara says, let's bring a raya from our story over here. Now what? If an animal is born with a defect, it's considered designated. Why? The famous concept of ben pekua. It's kedai to see these pictures again, even though we just had it, a week ago. What incredible picture of this was taken from an animal, from the stomach of an animal. But here's another one. This is Avrohom Moshe. This was from a video. How do you see this upside down? Yeah. Okay, here. If you look closely, these are the feet of the animal. This is the story I was talking about yesterday. She was dying, the mother, and here are the two babies, twin ben pekuas. If you shech the mother, and you see on the video, they shech the mother, and then they tear out these babies. The babies don't need shlita. Ben pekua, that's Allah ben pekua. Says the Gemara, this bechar didn't need shlita. It was mutter when it was in the mother's stomach. But once it was born, it became a what when it was born? A bechar. A bechar becomes a bechar asher yivalid, when it is born. Chazil Chachams went through 3 stages. Stomach, mutter. Born, aser. Chacham comes around, mutter. Mutter, aser, mutter. Chacham comes and says that it has a mum. But until the Chacham came, until you called him up, well, it's Yantif. Until you dialed your kosher phone on Yantif and told him to come right away, emergency. We have an animal that's a bchar, I want to eat it. And he comes and says, yes, it has a mum, and then you're allowed to eat it. But for those 2 hours until he showed up, it was aser. And the Gemara says, Ishtarilei. We say that it's mutter. So what do you see? That something that became aser for a few hours doesn't remain aser for the rest of the Yantif. The Gemara wants to bring a tushtel from this case to muktzah. No, there's no such thing. It was aser, and it only becomes mutter from that moment on that the Chacham says it's mutter. It's not igloi milsel mafreya that the mum was a mum and that. No, that's not how it works. Says the Gemara, what happened was there was never a moment of Isser. Why was there never a moment of Isser? Because as the baby was born, the Rav said, oh, look at it. It has a terrible defect. It's aser. It's mutter to eat. So never had a moment of Isser of eating. That's the case. Now we got a freebie over here. Some people learn it a little differently. That what? That if it's muktzah for a moment, it doesn't last for the whole Shabbos. Same exact sugya, but instead of asking a question, it becomes a raya. Because now we're saying the opposite halacha. We're saying it's not muktzah. Oh, and I have a raya to you. If everybody agrees that if this animal was born, this bechor is born, and it has a mum, that you're allowed to eat it on Yantif. It's a ben pekua in the stomach. You're allowed to eat it without shchita. And it's not a bechar. Why is it not a bechar? Because it wasn't born. If you rip it out of the mother's stomach after shchita, you could eat a bechar. Itchele, then it was isyalile, then it was born. Itchele became aser. Then third step is chazi l'chachim. You showed it to chachim. Ishtrulei. Oh, so you see a raya to you that if it's muktzah for a moment and then you make it mutter, it doesn't remain muktzah for the whole yantiv. Omar Abaya, not a good raya. Same exact sugya. There's no moment of Isser because the Dayanim sat there as it was mutter in the stomach, ben bekua. As it's coming out of the stomach, mutter, because the Rav said it's mutter on the spot before it was born. Toshma. He's in the middle of eating grapes. Rashi says he's in the middle of eating. It's the biggest raya that he wants all these grapes. It's not muktzah. He's in the middle of eating them. When on Erev Yantif, and he had leftover grapes, and he brought them up to his rooftop, wherever that picture was. You know what it looks like. Here, rooftop. It's hard to come by these pictures. This is a rooftop. Put grapes on the roof to make raisins, b'teinim. Or he took figs, and he had leftover groigres. The famous groigres. What's a groigres? It's a dried fig. You cannot eat from them unless you designate that raisin before Yont. Peaches, what's a chavush, Reb Eli? Here you go, a quince. Ubishar kol mini peiros. Anything you want to dry out. Hechidami. Says the Gemara, let's qualify. Either chazu lomali azmana. If they're edible, you don't have to designate. Why? Either loy chazu ki azmin lu mayhavi. And if they're not edible, what? What about Bein Hashmoshes?
That's the question.
Hechidami. Either chazu Bein Hash. Right. Either chazu if, again, going back to the Bein Hashmoshes. Migas katzoi Bein Hashmoshes katzoi l'kul yayma. If this is edible by Bein Hashmoshes, you don't need to designate it. You don't sit and designate every piece of food in your refrigerator. If it's edible, it's edible. And if it's not edible, so what if you say, I want to eat it, but it's not edible? It's muktzah. He just doesn't know. If you don't know about it, you don't know. So what if you don't know? The Gemara says you don't need to know. If your food is edible, if it's available, even if you don't know about it, it's not muktzah. El says, the Gemara says, the chazu v'itchu v'adar chazu. It was, like we said before, it was available to eat. Then it got pushed off. The rain came, so you couldn't eat it, and then it became edible again. V'yamar say muktzah. It doesn't stay for the whole day. Lomalu azmana. Why do you have to designate it? It's already edible. Elama yesh muktzah. So what are you going to tell me? What? It does stay for the whole day. Kazmul mahavi. So what if you designate it? You can't designate, says Rashi, you can't designate stones. You can't say, I want to eat stones for breakfast, and I'm designating stones for eating. It doesn't work. So you cannot designate unripe raisins. You can't, a raisin that's not edible is like a stone, says Rashi. You can't be mazmin it, you can't designate it. Says the Gemara, it's borderline roi. Oh, borderline. I have a corny joke. Borderline. Smacking the sugya. We're finishing it up. There was a guy who was about to cross the border and he got pulled over by a cop. Cop tells him, let's see if I remember it. It's mamish a shvacha joke. But there's nothing else going on. The cop tells him, I've been following you for 30 minutes and you don't even have a single infraction. I've never seen anything like it. On behalf of the police department, give you $500 as a gift. She says, wow, $500. Wow, that's going to go towards my driver license thing. I don't have a license yet. So his wife says, be quiet. Don't listen to him. He always talks shtusa when he's drunk. The kids, and the joke keeps on going on. And the mother-in-law said, I knew we were going to have trouble with the stolen car. And then they pulled out a thing. The kids said, hold up. Okay, bite it. Next. Yeah, there's that's the end of the story. I'm not joking. Oh, you know the joke. Okay, fine. It's an old one. But we don't say those lashonos. No, you know how much editing you caused me? Oh, Yosef, yeah. Not me. I've never touched these videos. Azmin, if he designated it, Goli died. So in other words, borderline. This is food that's somewhat edible. Some people eat it, some people don't. So if Azmin, if he designated it, you're asking, why does it help to designate? Because he's showing that he likes this borderline kind of food. Goli daite. Loy Azmin, but if he didn't designate it, loy Goli daite. Should we continue? A minute? What time is it?
We have tonight.
We have tonight, but tonight we have a daf also. How much?
2 minutes.
Okay, we'll do 2 minutes.
Make the video over an hour.
Omar, really? Okay, we'll stop right here. Good moed, everybody. Yishkoyach from coming in. We'll stop smacking Mel Sugi so it's not more than an hour. Chas v'shalom.